waters wide. I came across instead of I had wings to fly. That will carry to we both shall roam. My love and there is a boat. Sails the sea. It's laying deep, as deep can be. Your love is gentle and love is kind. The sweetest flower when first it blooms, but long grows cold and it waxes cool and fades away like morning dew. Good morning, good morning, good morning. I haven't slept much. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma last night. I saw Elvis Costello there and took an early morning flight so that I would have a chance of making this broadcast. And also it was just the fastest way I could get out of there. Although not that I wanted to get out of there, I just didn't want to spend all day flying. But anyway, Hymns and Hollers show. I was in the mood to play my old Stratocaster today. Isn't this thing pretty? This is it's the first year they made them, and I don't really have a great touch with it this morning because I haven't practiced and I haven't been playing this thing for about 2 or 3 months, so it's a whole different beast. But I was inspired to play this because last night I had, yesterday afternoon I had lunch with some new friends, and they were mostly LA folks in Tulsa. We were in town for the Bob Dylan Center opening, and it's fascinating. I'll tell you about that in a second, but I was sitting at lunch with some friends, the person who invited me and some other friends of hers, and at one point I said, I was just starting to talk technical, and I said, who here is a musician? And one guy raised his hand, and then the other guy said, well, I'm a music producer, I'm not really a musician. And, I said, oh, well, what have you played? So, who have you produced? And he says, records you've heard of. Turns out it's Rob Fabroni, and Rob was the producer of my absolute favorite Eric Clapton album, No Reason to Cry. And I just had a wonderful lunch with Rob. Rob, we were going over the ins and outs of how they made that record, the challenges, and I think it was Eric Clapton's third studio album. I'm not really sure about that, but it was the one right before Slow Hand, where he kind of came back into the fore. I believe there was Eric Clapton's first studio album, and then there was 461 Ocean Boulevard, and then there was this one, No Reason to Cry. I may be wrong about that. There were some live albums in there, but no, I'm talking about solo albums, not the stuff with Derek and the Dominoes. So, but anyway, On that record is "Hello, Old Friend," a song called "Carnival," and the reason why we were all in Tulsa was for Bob Dylan, and Bob Dylan wrote a song on there called "Sign Language." Wrote a song on there called "Sign Language." Marcy Levy, one of my favorite rock and roll singers, did a tune on that record. But if you don't have it, you might want to consider just getting a copy of "No Reason to Cry." It's just wonderful songs. It was done at Rob's Shangri-La studio in Malibu. They made such a small deal of Rob Fabroni, and it was they. I just never knew who produced that record, but it was one of my favorites, and I felt sort of dumb for that, but he was thrilled that I knew his work. And Clapton recorded that record on an old Stratocaster, so his was a 57 or something. This is a 54, and I just felt this morning when I got back, I said, I'm going to play the Strat and just kind of get back into that feel. So Clapton's one of my favorites, and on that tour in 1977, I saw Clapton with his full band, Yvonne Elliman and Marcy Levy and Carl Rattle and Radell and Jamie Oldacre and who's the guitarist also from Oklahoma. Darn it, I can't remember. But anyway, it was the best playing that I had ever heard Clapton do, and it was a show in the Omni in Atlanta, but anyway, it was just so inspiring to talk to somebody that had crafted a product that made my life better, and I thanked him for his work, and he was delighted to be respected in that sense. Happy Mother's Day, everyone. I don't have any Mother's Day songs ready. The first one was a song of mine called Epiphany, that kind of thing. And then the second one I went into one that I do a lot, an old hymn called The Water's Wide. And I love playing it on the Strat. Today, for you gearheads, I'm playing. I learned something. For you gearheads, I learned something. I'm playing a Supro. One of my favorite amps is a Supro model 1606, and it's a little 8-inch speaker or something like. If that, it might be a 6-inch. And here's what I learned. Last night, Elvis Costello and those guys had most of their amps on stage. They were sitting on the stage in the Kane Ballroom in Tulsa. And there was so much low end just boiling up on itself. I have to say, it wasn't really a good concert for me to listen to. I kind of left in the middle of it. And I went out into one of the side rooms, and it sounded way better because I wasn't having to sort of listening to the high end, trying to cut through the low end. It was just like a wrestling match up there. And it was because the kick drum was too loud, but also because the amps were on the stage, sitting on the stage, which effectively made the whole stage a speaker. So, rule of thumb, if you've got an amp that can really put out low end, don't put it straight on the stage, because the stage will accentuate the low end. Unless you need to accentuate the low end, and then do what I just did with my Supro, which is I lay it flat down, not face down, but back up, right on the floor. And so I use the floor to help me become it helps the amp. It's as if the amp has a bigger speaker. And so you get a lot more low end out of just a little 6-inch or 8-inch speaker if you do that. But you can't play it very loud. The thing about these old amplifiers, they have a sweet spot, and you can't push them beyond that sweet spot. You have to rely on microphones or whatever to make them louder. You don't make an old amp louder by turning it up. I'm sorry, that's just not a good idea. You make an old amp louder by putting it through a PA system and letting something else do the muscle. Because on those old amps, there's a sweet spot. And isn't that true of just about everything in life? In our lives, we have a sweet spot. In our mornings, in our dogs, they have a sweet spot. In our people, in our friends, they have this thing that they do, and they do it best in a certain volume. That might be between 4.5 and 5, which would be 4.75. But if everybody is running on 4.75, don't try to push them to 5.5. Don't try to push them till 8 to get them to work better. Figure out how to get the most out of them at 4.75. And so that's the spiritual lesson for the day. Those are small, Broadway Steve's saying, not one of those super heavy in this. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's saying. But this amp weighs almost nothing. Yes, if that's what you're saying. This Supra was originally made to be a lap steel amplifier, but it sounds great with these Fender speakers. I'm going to continue on with some music. I think I'll do one for my mother. She might be listening to me. I know she likes this song. I have no fancy effects on this thing. I'm going straight into the amplifier today. Pardon the buzz, but that's just what we get when I step off a plane and come straight in. So this is one of mine from my first solo record. Little angel, fly to me. Let me touch you. Let me see. 'Cause I'm gonna listen if you come around. On the devil side of town. Let a sparrow sing a song for the angel who don't belong. 'Cause she don't listen, not like she should. In the devil neighborhood, all I wanted was the truth. All I loved for mine and you. Tried to see the same world you saw too, from the angel's point of view. Let her weep on the ground. I'm an angel, no one's around. I keep flying when the sky's not blue. There's too much trouble to fly through. All I wanted was the truth. So I love what mine and you. Tried to see the same world you saw too. you and make you mine. I thought I'd save you, but what from? You're already loved by everyone. A little quick, rough rendition of an otherwise soft and beautiful song. I try to put a little edge in, and I can't help but do that with this old guitar. Look at this. This is one piece of wood right here. They don't make them anymore like that. Well, they do now because they realize that it's the best way to make them. But for years in the 60s and 70s and 80s and 90s, they didn't make them like this. They didn't go to the trouble of finding a piece of wood that was big enough to make a whole guitar, but it sounds better. And this is ashwood, and it's sawn in a way that kind of exposes. It's not even quarter sawn or plain sawn or whatever the term is. It's like in between or something. They had to twist the wood a weird way to get this one. So it's got real tight grain on parts of it and open grain on the other, and it's a very unusual one. I hope you're enjoying the show today. I went to a little trouble to be here with you this morning, it's my pleasure. I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma yesterday for the opening of the Bob Dylan Center. Thanks to Layla Nabosi. She's a film producer out in California, and she asked me to be her guest. And I wanted to tell you about some things that I saw at the Dylan Center, and I really, really suggest that you give it a shot and go out there and see it. There's a tremendous film archive. Well, first of all, let me back up, and I'm going to try to answer the question that a lot of you are probably wondering, is why is the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa? And the reason is that I believe the same investors or philanthropists who created the Woody Guthrie Center, and Guthrie's from that neck of the woods, but the folks who invested in the Guthrie Center and created that and built it were the people or the investment group who recently bought Bob Dylan's complete archives. I mean, he's sold everything from master tapes that he owned to old journals, instruments, stage costumes, and footage. Most importantly, the footage, that were in his possession of some of his greatest concerts. And if you're listening from Florida, one of the biggest treats, two of the biggest Florida-related treats in the Bob Dylan Museum in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is this wonderful footage from, I think, 1979. Could have been 1980. But Bob is playing in the Lakeland Civic Center, which is Lakeland, Florida. It was a fairly small Coliseum arena, or by today's standards, and it's still there. They call it something else, but he's playing in the Lakeland Civic Center, and I've always wanted to go there and see a concert. Some of you probably have, but what's cool about it? Normally, you wouldn't know what an arena looks like on the inside if you just see a concert that's videotaped, because it's all pointing towards the stage and everything else is black. But it's a single camera shoot, and the cameraman's walking up on stage around Bob, all around the band members. And for this song, Maybe they did it for the whole concert, but I only saw one song in the museum. For this song, and I think it was something like, I think it was Blowing in the Wind. That's what it was. The house lights are up. So you see all the people, you see the whole arena. And then when the song is over, the house lights go down. It's normally the reverse, but isn't that typical Dylan? But it is fantastic. The band sounds great. I don't know who any of the players are, but it's just on fire, and it's worth the trip to Tulsa just to see that clip. But before that, you see a clip of Dylan playing with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers in 1987, I believe. Is that right? No, 1978 maybe. 1978, I think. Or 77. And man, Dylan is playing one of these. He's playing a 54 or 55 Strat. And Tom Petty's band is so tight. Stan Lynch is on drums, just laying it down simple. And they're playing a song that kind of has the vibe of Maggie's Farm, but it's not Maggie's Farm. You know, it has that driving, you know, I'm in the wrong tune. You know, down where you come back, well, that kind of thing, and Stan just going, playing it really simple. Let me get back and stand in tune so I can demonstrate things. But and oh my gosh, Dylan is great. He's not kind of in that. He's not obscure. He's not trying to be intangible. He's just right there with him, and he's just on fire. He's playing guitar solos, and he's up front, and it's just fantastic. Some of this old footage, and what's the most exciting part for me, let me tune this guitar. I'm going to take out my phone because I took a photograph of something that was really, really inspiring. This is the only way I can do it. Look, once again, I'm fresh off the airplane here. I took a 5:30 flight. But check this out. This is Bob Dylan's musings or recollection, thoughts about Jimi Hendrix covering his music. And I'm going to read this. You know, it's just you and me. So let's just read this here. And it's typewritten with no mistakes, so I think he must have. It's like a letter. It's not a letter to Jimmy. It's a letter. It's about Jimmy, and the title of the page. It's an article, but it's a page long. It says Jimmy. I feel like reading the whole darn thing because it's just. I learned so much. It's always nice when another performer takes one of your songs and does it. Period. Usually someone has his own point of view on things and the lyrics correspond to what he's thinking in some kind of way, and the two meet up. My songs, now this is Dylan talking about his own tunes. My songs were not written with the idea in mind that anybody else would sing them. They were written for me to play live, and that is the sort of end of it. And that is sort of the end of it. I knew Jimmy slightly before he became a star, and I never saw him much after that. Naturally, there was a strong connection because we came from the same time, similar environments, and had more or less the same likes and dislikes, attitudes and experiences. When I first saw Jimmy, he was basically a blues player, but unlike everybody else, outside of the old authentic guys, he was young and he was the real thing. I'm going to stop right there and just, you know, that concept of somebody being the real thing. I always I recently thought that that's something we're doing in the last 4 or 5 years, because everything so much doesn't seem real. But people have been looking for the real thing since, at least since the early 70s. So hold on a second. Let me get my PayPal notice, which I'm very grateful for. The thing about, I'm going to rant here. Some notice pops up on my phone, and I touch the notice trying to get it to go away, and then it opens up some other window. So now I'm live on the air with you, and I have to navigate back through. Here we go. Now I'm finished with my rant. Who programs these things? They're geniuses, but they're moronic in one way, because they don't plan for these sorts of contingencies. Anyway, he's talking about Jimmy. He was the real thing, period. Getting back to the songwriting part, it can't be expected that a performer get under the song inside and blow it out. It's like getting inside of another person's soul. Most people have enough trouble getting inside of their own souls, and to take on another one, really most of the time, can't be worth the ride. Of course, there are different degrees of that. Like, for instance, there's not too much to getting into a Chuck Berry song. It's all pretty much there on the surface. You just kind of learn the riffs, mouth the words, and they sing themselves. You don't have to go too far. Anybody with half an ear can do it. The same thing with the Beatles. You learn the chords and sing the words, and you're a Beatle. There's no pain involved here. You're just doing songs that fly along. Don't step on anyone's toes, and having a good time doing it. But Bob says, my songs are different, and I don't expect others to make attempts to sing them, because you have to get somewhat inside and behind them. It's hard enough for me to do it sometimes, and then obviously you have to be in the right frame of mind. But even then, there would be a vague value to it, because nobody breathes like me. So they couldn't be expected to portray the meaning of a certain phrase in the correct way without bumping into other phrases and altering the mood, changing the understanding, and just giving up so that they become only verses strung together for no apparent reason. Patter for a performer to kill time, take up space, giving a heartless rendition of what it was to begin with. But Jimi Hendrix knew my songs were not like that. He sang them exactly the way they were intended to be sung, and he played them the same way. He did them the way I would have done them if I was him. Never thought too much about it at the time, but now that years have gone by, I see the message. I see that the message must have been his through and through. Not that I ever could articulate the message that well myself, but in hearing Jimmy cover my songs, I realized he must have felt them pretty deeply inside and out, and that somewhere back there, his soul and my soul were on the same desert. I can't speak as a musician, but as a songwriter. It's always a humbling feeling to know that other musicians like your stuff, especially if you really respect them. Audiences and critics give important feedback, but there's nothing like another performer doing what you're doing to let you know if you're doing it well or not, if you're cutting through, that maybe it's really worth all the time and trouble. In all my years of being on stage, it still means more to me what other musicians and singers think and feel about my work than any other thing, than anybody else. I'm going to repeat that, because we think of people on Dylan's level and stature as being invincible and well, I mean, I think he even portrayed that in his early years. You know, he would be in the limos leaving after he had gone into his electric phase, and he would say, "Don't boo me. Please don't boo me." And he'd shut the door, you know. shut the window on him. And it's like, they're booing me. And it seemed like it didn't matter too much to him. But maybe it didn't, because as he says, those were fans. But he's talking about musicians here. So I'm going to repeat that again. It's in all my years of being on stage, it still means more to me what other musicians and singers think and feel about my work than anybody else. Jimmy was a great artist, and I wish he would have lived, but he got sucked under, and that's been the downfall of a lot of us. I feel he had his time and his place, and he paid a price he didn't have to pay. It's not a wonder to me that he recorded my songs, but rather that he recorded so few of them, because they were all his. Bob Dylan. And it's just, there are so many of these little insights in that museum, and I urge you, if at all possible, to buy a ticket to Tulsa. Also go to the Greenwood section, where the black folks in town who had eventually come into Tulsa in mass as a part of the Native American exodus. They were, many of them were lumped along with the Cherokee and the other tribes and walked the Trail of Tears, made it all the way to Tulsa, eventually just started their own neighborhood north of Tulsa. And I don't know the entire story, but white folks were upset that they were so incubated and doing so well on their own. They were reinvesting in their own businesses. That area of town was very prosperous. I think it was called Greenwood. And white folks were deputized and basically allowed to ransack the place. They basically tore the whole neighborhood down, burned it to the ground, and very little of it remains. There's a highway that now runs through there. There's a baseball park that they built there. But there are monuments and memorials to it, and there's a big museum called Greenwood Rising. I think it's called Greenwood Rising. Unfortunately, I just was there for less than 24 hours, and I couldn't be at the museum at a certain time to take the tour, but I'm going back. I'm only 4 hours from there. And it was a wonderful experience. So I'm so tired. I had 3 hours sleep, but I just wanted to share with you some of what I saw at the Dylan Museum. Well, it's the Bob Dylan Center. The Woody Guthrie Center I didn't spend too much time in, but I understand they're interested in having me play there. Possibly later this year, and I'm in the mood to do a fall tour. I don't know if it'll be early fall or late. Probably going to be a solo tour, and going to bring out all these guitars and do a little bit of everything that I do. I'm going to leave you with one spiritual song, and I will say this. I'm going to be playing I'm going to be playing a lot this month. I'm playing with Rob Curto, my partner who plays accordion. We have a group or project called the Swampalachian Trail, where we're mixing reels with some of my swampy stuff, my hollers and all of that. May 23rd, we're playing at the Burren in Somerville near Boston. If you have folks up there, please email them and send them links to this show or my website. We're playing on, what night am I playing in Philadelphia or Lansdowne? May 19th, I'm in the Philadelphia area at the Lansdowne Folk Center, Music Center, or something like that. So I haven't played in Philadelphia in ages. Looking forward to being back there. May 25th, if I have that date right, May 26th. And there's a reason why Margot is putting this up on my screen. May 26th, I'm playing back in my old hood in Jersey City with Rob Curto and the Fox and Crow. Can't wait to do that and share some of this music with you guys. And so many dear friends from that area, Christine Santelli, great blues singer, Larry Heineman, one of the co-founders of the Blue Man Group. Oh, the amazing architect Lee Levine is in that area. Nick Caballero, a developer that I just strongly admire. Kate Silver, and of course Art Johnson, the person who owns the Fox and Crow and has really changed the neighborhood in that sense. Kern Weissman, of course, our partner with many of the events there. I can't wait to see you guys and all the friends that go unnamed. Also, the big one is June 5th, Sunday, June 5th. I'm going to be playing a rare show with my group, The Unlawful Assembly, the full group, the original recorded version of The Unlawful Assembly featuring Michael Bellar on organ. My partner, Stephen Williams, who produced the record, plays drums. Paul Frazier plays bass, and Ada Dyer on vocals. Ada, oh my gosh, she sings occasionally with Sting. She sang for years with Chaka Khan, and also Killing Me Softly with His Song. Roberta Flack. You've got to see this, folks. I mean, if there's still a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and this is the Sunday of the Jazz Festival. The big day is Saturday of the Jazz Festival. It's a free jazz festival in downtown Jersey City. There are hotels all around there. If you're not from Jersey City or New York, it's worth a trip to New York. Go over right across the river and you'll see Manhattan. But this is, it would mean a lot to me if you could see the Unlawful Assembly on Sunday, June 5th at 1 p.m. and stick around that same day around 5 o'clock. Julian Lange is playing, and he's at 4 o'clock. He is one of the premier cutting-edge jazz guitar players in the world, and he is so in demand. I can't believe they got him for this show, and I can't believe we're going to be on the same stage with him. It's going to be such an honor. And thanks to Brian Brent Benninghoff and the Jersey City Jazz Festival. I'm going to leave with a song that I do perform with the Unlawful Assembly. This is a favorite spiritual of mine called Old Blind Barnabas. Blind Barnabas stood on the wheel. Oh, blind Barnabas stood on the wheel. Good God Almighty, have mercy on me. Oh, blind Barnabas stood on the wheel. Oh, blind Barnabas stood on the wheel. Oh, blind Barnabas stood on the wheel. Hear my God's Bible in the book of James, healing the sick and the crippled and lame. He gave to the poor and the needy bread. He healed the sick and people he raised the dead. And he tell me that he came from Galilee. He stood by a man who could not see. The man was blind and crippled from birth. They tell me that his name was Barnabas. They said, oh, blind Barnabas stood on the way. 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 Well, my Lord stood and looked around and saw Barnabas on the ground. He touched his eye with the hand of his hand. Barnabas saw like a natural man. He said, oh, Lord, son of David. Oh, Lord, Mary's baby. Oh, Lord, be the healing hand of a blind man. Oh, Lord, son of David. Mary's baby. Oh, Lord, be the healing hand of a blind man. Woo! Oh, blind Barnabas stood on the way. 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 Woo! Oh, blind Barnabas stood on the way. When Barnabas heard that the Lord was nigh, he fell to his knees and began to cry, "See, sweet Jesus from Galilee, can't you have a little mercy on me?" He said, "Oh Lord, Son of David, oh Lord, Mary's baby, oh Lord, be the healing hand. I'm a blind man, oh Lord, Son of David, oh Lord, Mary's baby, oh Lord, be the healing hand. I'm a blind man." Oh, by mama's during that, but that's what happens in the live broadcast. But I just want to say, listen to the sound of this guitar. Doesn't it sound like those old records? It's just got such a great, almost pre-mixed sound. I'll go on about that later when I'm not so tired. Thank you for listening today. Happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to my mother. Her name is Stella. You guys can write her. She lives, I can't remember her address. Let's see if we can get that. I would love for you to write my mother today. Send her a postcard if you wouldn't mind. Well, I tell you what, let's just do better than that. Let's see here. This is my mother's mobile number. Her number is 904-655-7571. Please pick up the phone and just call my mother. She's in Jacksonville, Florida. At what address? 1045 Oak Street, suite number 912. And her blood type is A positive. Her social security number is, no, I'm not going to go so far. But anyway, call my mother. She's lonely. She's a lonely old woman. And she has nobody. She tries to find boyfriends and so on, but she says that they all want to take her to the bedchamber. And some people are just, that's just, the older men, they feel like when they get to that point, they don't mind getting the STPs and all that sort of thing. And but my mother will have none of it. She's a chaste woman. She's completely a virgin, and she's she's made a vow to the Lord that she wants to stay a virgin for the rest of her life, and but still in that vow, there's so much loneliness that comes along with it. So you can help her to assuage, essentially, just soothe that loneliness by calling my mother. Should I repeat the number again? No, Margaret's going, I can't believe you're doing this on the air. My mother's going to love this. And she needs friends, people. 904-655-7571. Just text her if you don't want to call her. But she's just waiting for your call. And her name is Stella. So I hope you guys have a good time. She'd love to hear from you. There's people listening all over the world. Canadians have called in, people from South Carolina. Exotic places like Arkansas, which I just flew over this morning. I'm sorry I flew over and didn't come down there and play for you, Steve. But Charlie from Miami, good Lord, it's a smorgasbord of people. Thank you so much. I'm going to stop talking before I get in any more trouble because I am operating on 3 hours sleep. We've covered the unlawful assembly in New Jersey, Jersey City. We've covered me and Rob playing in the Northeast coming up. And there's a date that we're trying to get, by the way, in the D.C. area in late May. So check with the website.
Oh, and you're going to be in Arco Santi in June?
I will be in Arco Santi near Phoenix in June. That's going to be super cool, playing under the big vaults. Look on the website for that. I can tell you more about it. We covered the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa. We covered what you can see by going to the Bob Dylan Center. I sang The Angel's Point of View from my first solo CD, if you enjoyed that. Most of you guys have all my records, but if people from time to time are, they're new to my music, and I have a solo CD called Walter Parks. It's available on my website. I played The Waters Wide. I have not recorded that yet. I played Epiphany. That's what I started with, also on my solo CD. And I think my only other song that I played was that last one, Old Blind Barnabas, which is on the Unlawful Assembly record that's out. I would say, here's a little tip. Get the Unlawful Assembly if you'd like an early version of it, because we're going to be re-releasing it in the fall or winter time as a new package. And that's all I can say right now, but we're excited about this new re-release. Kay Wenzine, my wife-in-law, is she? I always get that wrong. It's not my wife-in-law. What is? I'm so tired, folks. I am so sorry. My mother-in-law, my wife-in-law, my wife's mother, which makes her my mother-in-law, is she's laughing and saying that my mother is going to kill me. Well, you guys can see and Kristen is anyway. You guys, I gotta go. Bye bye.